Hello, 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 people. That's doing sound test.
To listen to the interpreters if we tell you more volume or less or whatever. Check
Okay.
the receiver to listen to us speaking from the booth, if you can.
Okay, this sound, I'm checking the sound, sound is mic one is perfect. Mic one is doing well.
Testing sound 1G. Testing sound 1G, check sound 1G.
Okay, we're testing sound, We're testing sound.
Testing 1G. Testing 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Testing 1G. Testing 1G. Check, check, check. 1G. Testing 1G. Testing sound 1, 2. Testing sound 1G. Checking sound 1G. 1G. Testing 1G.
1, 2. English.
She's happy. She's happy. Test 1G, check sound 1G, testing sound 1G, testing hear me clean 1G. Mister 1G, checking 1G, testing sound 1G, check sound 1G, testing sound 1G, check sound 1G, testing 1G. 1G.
Dear colleagues, can we get this? Oops, sounds very strong. Colleagues, please, we are about to start. So I would be asking Deputy Mayor of Barcelona, Laia Bonet, to join us on behalf of Metropolis, the Mayor of Surabaya to join us on behalf of ICLEI, and then Reverend Mpo on behalf of CLGF, and my own president, Mr. Park Stau. He's here, right? Yes. I didn't forget you, President, I promise.
Two.
Hello, how are you? Máximo, voy a necesitar agua de verdad, no puedo beber esto. Necesito agua o mi té. Alguien que me lo traiga, por favor.
¿En botellas?
Yo necesito agua en botella, sí.
Okay.
Perfecto. Es que si no me enfermo.
Estos son los constituencies.
Perfecto. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. It feels like really early because we've had a very, very long week. And this morning when the alarm clock went, I thought, oh, I cannot believe it's already that time. So I'm really grateful that so many souls and so many happy faces are around in the room following this session. Because for me, I've been saying this throughout the week also to my own UCLG leadership and colleagues. This is one of the most significant moments of this week. Because it symbolizes how far we have come as local and regional governments constituency in getting organized as one. In becoming truly an articulated mechanism of interlocution with the international community. I am very grateful for the generosity of our sister organizations, of ICLEI, of CLGF, of C40, our own regional sections that all very actively participate, and many others that are collaborating with the Global Task Force for having joined us throughout this process, for having led many sessions during the World Congress, and for their continuous commitment to ensure our advocacy before the United Nations. As you know, the World Assembly of Local and Regional Governments is the political mechanism that the Global Task Force, that is made up of all of our organizations, convenes to get the political voices of our constituency together before the international policy-making processes. And the World Assembly of Local and Regional Governments was a very powerful tool for us to achieve some of the most important points that are included on local governments in the new urban agenda. The World Assembly of Local and Regional Governments is also acknowledged in the outcome document of the Quito Conference of Habitat 3 as the mechanism that needs to follow the implementation of the new urban agenda. And this is very important, and I feel that sometimes we don't use it enough. It has been acknowledged by the member states that this is the mechanism that they need to consult to assess whether we are meeting the targets of the new urban agenda or not. And so it is in our hands to actually monitor that. And in order to do that, yes, first we need to get our act together, and I think we are getting it together. We're getting organized as a constituency. But then it's impossible to do it without the rest of the constituencies. And this is why it's also very critical that among us, we also have the civil society partners. And they are teaming up with us in this structural dialogue that within the Habitat 3 process started with the General Assembly of Partners, GAP, where all the constituencies are together, and that we are consolidating now through our town hall process. Today, those constituencies are here with us, and I would like to acknowledge some of the organizations that are leading those processes. A process of co-creation that has led to very strong policy recommendations that we are receiving today and that have been debated throughout the week. So I would like to acknowledge, and I hope you are going to give a big applause to the Wahiru Commission for their continued work on women empowerment and providing recommendations on gender equality. The local-to-local dialogue is not possible without them. The General Assembly of Partners that gathers all of us, included local and regional governments constituency, and that is vigilant on sustainability. The Global Platform on the Right to the City and the Habitat International Coalition are debating inclusive cities and cities for rights, and the right to the city as a concept that needs to guide the policy making of our organization. Please, also a big applause for these colleagues that have invested so much in us. The Cities Alliance, WIGO, and Slum Dwellers International that have been bold enough to bring to this conference a very tough topic of dealing with informality. And I really am very grateful to them for the inputs. A big applause for them, please. And World Unable that is raising our awareness about how very little inclusive we are and how very little access we provide. But it is a promise of, I think, this assembly that will change and that we will work with them to understand accessibility differently. So thank you very much, and an applause for you too. So those are the constituencies. That's the co-creation process that we are starting. Next year is important because we have the opportunity to contribute to two very important processes. The Beijing Plus 25 process, I think, is very critical to have the local perspective in that, but also we will be able to contribute to the consultation of the United Nations on the 75th anniversary. The Under-Secretary General of the UN was here with us during our opening ceremony. He is convinced that there needs to be a special consultation with local governments. And of course, local governments will not be there without listening to the constituencies. So that's what we are getting started here. President, I know I have been too long, but I had to say all of these things, and now I am in your hands to give us the introduction speech.
Thank you very much, Emilia. Dear mayors, regional leaders, colleagues and friends, thank you for being with us today at the session of the World Assembly of Local and Regional Governments convened by the Global Task Force. I would like to thank all the members from our sister organizations from the Global Task Force for their efforts to ensure that the World Assembly of Local and Regional Governments is a true platform that represents our joint vision on the international stage. And I would also like to underscore the great achievements of organizing the constituency under the Global Task Force. Friends, since my appointment as Deputy Minister in the South African government, I have often joked about wearing two hats, even though Emilia says I've gone to the dark side, and about the duality that this has represented, at least for me, in the past few months. One as representative of our national government, and the other as president of UCLG, and therefore representative on the international stage of the international municipal movement. And I've often had to interchange these roles, particularly as we get to UN platforms. It is my ambition, and I'm sure it is shared by many here, that as we enter the so-called implementation decade, this duality begins to dissipate as we endeavor to change the model of governance to better represent the views and the solutions from everyone involved in the achievement of the Universal Development Agenda. I am convinced, and my new position has only strengthened my belief, that this is the model that we have to promote and protect if we wish to transform the world to make it livable for all our communities. Dear friends, dear colleagues, the sitting of this World Assembly taking place today is a moment to reflect and indeed to celebrate the achievements since Habitat 3. The spaces that we have opened for ourselves at the high-level political forum with the local and regional governments forum, the renewed UN Habitat Assembly, and the mobilization of our constituency for the highest forums on climate change, such as the COP and UNEA 4. Dear friends, the high-level week at the UN General Assembly this September brought to us a harsh realization, and we share the sense of urgency expressed. We are not on track to achieve the global goals that were adopted in 2015 and the Paris Agreement, or keeping the global temperature to under 1.5 degrees. We consider the principles outlined in the 2030 Agenda as critical milestones for the renewal of our social contract, and the only way in which we will be able to fulfill the Universal Development Agendas and transform our society. We need to upscale our efforts, and to this end, it is our duty to remember once again that the implementation of the 2030 Agenda will not occur in a vacuum. Only through the implementation of the New Urban Agenda as an accelerator for the goals, and through the 2030 Agenda as a new and social contract and framework, will we be able to bring the Paris Agreement to fruition. Local and regional governments are already actors working to achieve the global development agendas, providing basic public services for our citizens. It is these public services and the policies that we develop that are cornerstones of the transformative models that will allow us to guarantee a sustainable future. But we're also aware that no single sphere of government can do this alone. Today is also the moment to renew our commitments to secure these spaces and to secure this platform, the World Assembly, as our own, but with the participation of all stakeholders to ensure that no one is left behind, to showcase that it is local and regional governments and their work on providing basic services for our communities who are integral to achieving the Universal Global Development Agenda. Colleagues, as president of UCLG, I'm thrilled to see this World Assembly as the end game of the process of co-creation envisioned within this World Summit, with the debates and the outcomes from our policy-making sessions and tracks feeding into the future of the municipal movement. As a representative of a national government, it is my pleasure to have seen participation of all levels of government together in this Congress to co-create the solutions for the future. Dear friends, as you might know, in fact, as you know, that today is my last day as president of UCLG. Allow me to end my intervention by saying that it has been a great privilege and honor to bear the torch for localization throughout the world, and that While I'm no longer a member of the network, I too will take to heart the lessons learned and the commitments undertaken during these 3 years to ensure a future that leaves no one and no place behind. Thank you very much.
I cannot start crying in the morning because I will be crying throughout the day. I cannot say goodbye to my president yet. Not yet. So now I would like to give you the Deputy Mayor of Barcelona, Mrs. Laia Bonet. Laia, your first time with us in the World Assembly, but certainly not the first time for Barcelona. That has been a diehard in this process, always with us, bringing important issues to our agenda. Please, Laia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Emilia, and good morning, everyone. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Laia Bonet, Deputy Mayor for Barcelona. For the 2030 agenda. So the first thing I would share with you is that I'm honored to be here today on behalf of my city, but also on behalf of UCLG in this sitting of the World Assembly of Local and Regional Governments. Let us recall why we are here today. This assembly is the instrument for follow-up and review of the new urban agenda, one of the universal development agendas that includes a stronger voice of our constituency, yet also one of the forgotten ones in the world of SDGs. As you know, UCLG has been defending the universal and indivisible nature of all global agendas. However, even the United Nations keeps forgetting about the new urban agenda. We can certainly assume the responsibility to bring it back to the table as a key accelerator for the implementation of the 2030 agenda, the Paris Agreement, and the Sendai framework. This sitting of the World Assembly is historical. We, local and regional governments, are not alone. I would like to welcome today the representatives of civil society, grassroots movements, research institutions, international organizations, and all other stakeholders that we have joined us in Durban. The co-creation process that we are undertaking in this UCLG Congress is a remarkable work that we need to celebrate. If we are to continue working to bring the voices of our communities to the international level, we need to extend this co-creation logic to the rest of our representation mechanisms. This is why this session is so important. In the interconnected and complex world we live in, the challenges we face in terms of social and climate justice will not be solved by governments alone, and neither by corporations, civil society, and academia. Rather, they will require alliances, partnerships, as enshrined in the new urban agenda and the 2030 agenda to achieve the social, economic, and ecological transformation that we need. Conflict is inherent to urban life. As citizens, we all have preferences on a range of issues which are not necessarily aligned with what companies in our city do, the policies our government implements, or the research conducted by academia. As local and regional governments, we need to be aware that the decisions we make are likely to leave a few people unsatisfied. However, when it comes to sustainable development, the overarching goal of global agendas, We need to strive for consensus. The future of our planet and our society is at stake. And for this, dialogue and agreement through democratic means are key. We need to govern in partnerships, rather than seeing partnership as another policy mantra. This, of course, is not only a formal matter. It aims at ensuring the well-being of our communities by co-creating with them and addressing the challenges we face in terms of human rights, local democracy, gender equality, and many others. This is what Localizing Global Agenda is about. And this is why the content of our discussions today is so important. I look forward to a productive session that will strengthen our voice and our linkages with all stakeholders. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor, on behalf of Metropolis and UCLG, of course. Look, there have been, all of us, all of our organizations, and we are now over 24 different organizations in the Global Task Force, has really put a very big effort in this endeavor. And generosity has been critical. Forgetting the logos, you know, forgetting the seats and the posts. We're just trying to build this together. As a matter of fact, when we go to the United Nations, we don't put our own organizations in the titles. We just go there as one single constituency. But I want to acknowledge here in this opening ceremony today very critical organizations, the founding organizations of the Global Task Force. And we are missing one in the podium because of different issues. But ICLEI, Metropolis, CLGF, and Regions 4, that used to be Energy 4SD, have been really the founders of this movement. And this is why all of you are with us. And this serves as an introduction to the mayor of Surabaya, also a diehard that no matter whether she's in the wheelchair or not, she comes, she has always been there with us in New York, facing everything that we had to face. And so I'm very, very happy that you are part of this opening ceremony on behalf of ICLEI this time. Please, Mayor, the floor is yours. Let's see if that one works. That's it? No?
Thank you, Amelia. Yes, I let me introduce myself. I am Risma Harini, Mayor of Surabaya, also to be UCLG Asia Pacific President. Yes, our colleagues and friends, I would like to thank all network and city sister organization for being here in so big numbers. The World Assembly is both our heritage of a century-old movement and is our key for the future. It is our joint advocacy mechanism that has shaped our contribution to the new urban agenda and Habitat 3. Our joint advocacy mechanism that we use to celebrate the local global movement for localization. Our joint advocacy mechanism to celebrate the shift in the narrative on climate action and the ecological transition as necessary to face the climate emergency. With the Global Task Force and the World Assembly, we take pride in our capacity to articulate our diverse voices, and we are ready to go beyond the amplification of voices into a joint policy-making space. Mindful of our diversity in the specific purposes of each of our neighbors, we stand together as one, as a single but diverse interlocutors before the international community to shape our sustainable and resilient future. Dear friends, in this spirit, we commit to build our future policies considering the collective learning of our network with the indispensable contribution from the civil society. In Surabaya, for example, public participation has been our key to succeed government programs. Placing citizens at the heart of the development and community engagement has helped us to solve our problem faster and more effective, because the city government has limited financial capacity to overcome all urban issues alone. This will constitute the basis towards transformative action in each of the organization and inform our policy position to reinforce our constituency towards the implementation decade. This very session in Durban is critical. We are entering a decade in which everything is at stake. And this meeting of the World Assembly that has gathered today in Durban represents an opportunity to accelerate our action to achieve sustainable and protect our natural world, and to rethink partnerships among all stakeholders holding this shared vision. With the town hall and assembly processes that have started 6 months ago, and that will go way beyond this week in Durban, we built bottom-up policy processes and we co-created with our constituencies. Our national world is at a crossroad, and we must come together to take transformative action to achieve not only the global agendas but to guarantee a future for the generation to come in the name of solidarity. Only in this manner we will be able to safeguard the diversity of our planet presently and in the future. The World Assembly, through the Global Task Force, need to consolidate this space of structural dialogue to put forward principles of solidarity, to create the transformation societies and communities around the world are calling for. Incorporating this vision from the civil society and region from all over the world. These visions are integral to ground this transformation. I would like to thank once again all networks that have put their strength in consolidating our movement during this week and what is building an ever stronger coalition for a more sustainable future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I would like now to take the opportunity to thank many of the mayors that are joining us, and I would like, I know that when you do this, you forget people, okay? But I think that some of you do deserve the mention because of your continued support, particularly during this past year. So I would like to acknowledge the presence of the Mayor of Geneva, of the Mayor of Granollers, of the Mayor of Banjul, of the Mayor of Subanjaya, of the Mayor of Plaine Commune, Patrick Brausek. All of them have been very active in providing not only policy vision, but also their faces to this movement. And also the Mayor of Tunis, of course, Madam. Welcome. So I just wanted you to be aware of who we have in the room, because we've got very important people around, and we even have a regional government representative, the head of Congope, also with us, the regions of Ecuador. Thank you very much for being here. And it leads me to you, Reverend. From the very, very beginning, it has been quite a few years already that we are in this endeavor together representing the wells of the views of the Commonwealth Local Government Forum. A few words from you, Reverend.
Thank you very much, Madam Director of Ceremonies Facilitator, the very able Secretary General of the United States Local Governments. To you, Mr. Pakstow, the President of UCLG, on your last day. My colleagues, the Deputy Mayor of Barcelona, Mayor of Surabaya. To you, my colleagues, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, We as the Commonwealth are delighted to be at this Assembly of Local and Regional Governments. And that's one of the founder members of the Global Task Force, which has been and continues to be a key network bringing representative local government organizations together with key partners such as UN Habitat, the United Nations Development Programme, to ensure that government debates together and has one clear voice in the negotiations and processes towards major global agreements, including the Agenda 2030 and the new urban agenda that all of us have committed to, and said we will drive this and use it as part of our effort to implement SDG 11. We are proud to have followed the process of this important assembly, which its early genesis has its early genesis at Habitat 2. Many of you will remember the iconic photograph of mayors and leaders of local and regional governments with Ban Ki-moon at the World Assembly in Quito during Habitat 3 years ago. That is following Bogota, and we proceeded to Quito. That meeting, and indeed the photograph, in many ways symbolized the fact that local and regional governments had secured recognition as key partners in the achievement of the Agenda 2030 and the new urban agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, however, I must hasten to indicate that global recognition must be underpinned by delivery. As we move towards 2020, which will signal the decade of implementation for the SDGs, local and regional governments must continue to ensure a strong focus on implementation at the local level, and the Global Task Force must continue to evolve to support the sector in this regard. The UCLG Congress has been an excellent forum for us to work together, to exchange and share with peers, learn from good practice, and to debate policy issues and priorities, which will be essential if local government is to harness local opportunities and to manage global risks and challenges. The Congress has brought together not just the UCLG membership, but also many, many partners, including the members of the Global Task Force. One of the new innovations, and which I congratulate you for, of this Congress has been the town hall track. This has provided a space for our civil society partners to develop policy positions and present and debate them with mayors and local government stakeholders from across the network. I would like to thank our partners from civil society as well as members for the excellent interactions in the town hall sessions. I was privileged and really exhilarated to participate in our town halls on addressing issues of informalities. And I congratulate yourselves, UCLG, and Cities Alliance for this wonderful work. And the input that came in there was very enriching. Working more closely with civil society partners we are able to reach easily is an added advantage on our part, and continues to be a way in which governments can be able to reach the entire and ensure that the entire populace at local level is reached. We hope this track will be the start of a process of co-creation to enable the Global Task Force to reflect the call for multi-level governance and to build on where we are now with a move towards a more bottom-up process of planning and development of the policy positions of local government and the Global Task Force towards international processes that it has embarked on. Now, the real challenge for all of us, ladies and gentlemen, after Durban, is to ensure that we deliver to our citizens. We are moving towards the final 10 years of the Agenda 2030 into the decade of implementation. We know very well that the SDGs will be won and or lost in the cities and towns. And this assembly is an opportunity to look at how we are taking a lead and how we can evolve as a partnership to develop shared policies to strengthen our delivery to our people. And I commend all of you for your participation this morning and continued work in this line, and we could commit ourselves as political leadership while we're able to use this forum to continue to reach our goals. Mr. Tau, congratulations. We have not lost you. For advocacy purposes, you are well placed now, and we are grateful that you have been elevated to the position you are in, and you will bring our voice inside there. And therefore, we are very happy. Amelia, I congratulate you. When Mr. Tai was appointed, and immediately thereafter, a new Secretary General, I said, what a combination. It reminded me of the CLGF one, where you had a new president and the chairman and a new Secretary General. But it has worked well, and you have done very, very well, both of you, and your staff and our partners. And I congratulate you also for this very exciting and well-run and well-planned assembly. Thank you very much. God bless us and grant us speed in all that we do.
Thank you very much. It was scary for us too, right, President? We also felt, both of us new to the job. But I think it was, I think neither he nor I, in fact, were totally new. And I guess with your support, that's what made it work. Allow me to wrap up this session by recalling some of the inputs that we are bringing together in our outcome document of this session. As you have heard from our leadership, this gathering takes a very great pride at our capacity to articulate our diverse voices as we unite and are ready to move beyond the amplification of voices and into the space of joint policy making. That's what we want to do now, and this is why the town hall track and the inputs of civil society are so important. We are very mindful of our diversity and the specific purposes of each of our networks, and we want to treasure that and we want to preserve that. But we will stand together as one before the international community while celebrating our unique and complementary contributions to shaping our sustainable and resilient future. We are also committed to strengthening our governance and to creating a governance leadership of this World Assembly that will allow us to go into the next level. And we will develop very direct contacts with the Office of the United Nations Secretary General. We have made great progress in that conversation, but we think that we can go even further. Things do not go as fast as they should, we feel, and we are also not going to be waiting to be invited. We will create our own spaces. So I hope that today is a place to reflect on what we have done, on what we should do, and I thank you very much. This will end the opening session of the World Assembly of Local and Regional Governments.
Hello, everybody. May I please ask everybody that's on the next panel, which is the first of the 3 dialogues, to come up to stage and take your seats, please. My name is Kirby Brandt. I will be moderating this session. I'm standing in for my Secretary General from ICLEI, Gina van Begin, who unfortunately had to depart early this morning because of the South African airstrike at the moment, to get to another meeting very urgently. So I'm representing ICLEI, Gina van Begin here, and I'm very, very pleased to do so and to invite my fellow panelists for this session to please come up to stage. If I can just read out the names. We have 2 representatives from civil society, Ms. Violet Shivutse, please come up, and Mr. Hannes Lagrelius. Ms. Violet Shivutse is the founder and coordinator of the Shibuye Community Health Workers, and Mr. Hannes Lagrelius is the program officer of Accessibility in Smart Cities, the Accessibility in Smart Cities initiative from the World Blind Union. Please come up and join our executive leaders from local and subnational governments, the Mayor of Tunis, Ms. Suyad Abderrahim, and then the Mayor of Geneva, Ms. Sami Kanan, and the Mayor of Iriga, Ms. Madeleine Yorobe, and finally, Ms. Gun Marit Helgesen, the Councillor of Telemark and President of the Norwegian Association of Local and Regional Governments. She's also the CMR co-president, and it's wonderful to see that we've got such a diverse panel and also a very gender-balanced panel. So thank you very much. Please take your seats. I will just check that everybody is here. Great. And if the microphones don't work, we'll just pass them along. Right, so without further ado, we're going to go straight into this first session. There's 3 of these plenaries that are taking place. The first one is focusing on challenges and priorities, the quest of the local and regional government constituency in the current context, in the current global context. We're going to hear opening remarks from our 2 civil society colleagues, and then we're going to hear remarks and addresses from our political leaders from our constituency, and then open the floor for a short discussion. We only have 1 hour. We are running a little bit late, so I'm please asking you to make your interventions short. Shorten them if you can, so that we give everybody the opportunity to speak. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to start with Ms. Violet Shivutse, who is going to make the first opening remarks on behalf of civil society. Ms. Shivutse, over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. My name is Violet Shivutse. I'm the global chair for the Wairu Commission, which is a movement of grassroots women-led organizations globally. And I'm so humbled to present the outcomes that came from recommendations from the UCLG Town Hall meeting on gender equality and women's empowerment, which highlighted the level of maturity and political strength in local women's leadership, also how central this progressive leadership is to realizing prosperous, growing, and inclusive cities and rural townships. Featuring grassroots, other gender equality activists with proven good local development practices alongside UCLG members, women mayors, civil society organizations, grassroots women who actively collaborate with similar groups in their cities. The town hall meeting illustrated how center staging women's strategies to promote gender-responsive local governments can produce centers of growth and excellence. And these are the recommendations from this meeting. Embrace the principles that gender equality is essential to catalyzing and countering prejudice. foster political will and collaborative norm setting process that redress the underrepresentation of women in public decision-making roles, elected and non-elected. Partnership among different stakeholders, grassroots women, local government, etc., to bring positive change that makes cities and towns gender inclusive and consciously create opportunities for these champions to exchange tools, strategies, and successes that make our own work and the work of others more powerful and impactful. Incubate and disseminate knowledge around gender equality and women's empowerment in cities and make visible the women and grassroots groups who often are leading in these efforts. Affirm UCLG role in popularizing and growing networks of women, local authorities committed to gender equality and women such as Rafaela, and mobilize funding to underwrite collaborative gender equality strategies, and grassroots and local authority monitor their progress and lessons learned. In 2 years, at the AfriCities African Regional Congress in Kisumu, Kenya in 2021. Thank you.
This is the interpreters. Please, if you're going to read a text, could you bring a copy of it to the interpreters? It's difficult to follow at this speed. Thank you very much.
Congratulate the whole of the Global Task Force and UCLG in particular that's put this program together to allow such strong voices and opportunity to hear back from civil society and to be enriched by civil society inputs. So Hannes, I think without further ado, over to you. As I said, Hannes is representing the World Blind Union and also is a program officer of the Accessibility in the Smart City Initiative of the World Blind Union. So thank you very much, Hannes.
Interpreters will ask anyone who's going to read a text to bring a copy to the booth, please.
Friends, changemakers. I'm Hannes Yli Lagrelius, and I will present the key draft principles coming out from the town hall track on sustainable urban development from the General Assembly of Partners. We need to move from rhetoric to reality. We all recognize that multi-level and stakeholder partnerships are essential for sustainable urban development. To this end, we have developed key draft principles for multi-stakeholder partnerships in a co-creative process, including significant contribution from mayors. Our summary of these draft principles with additional input from this week are: we have to understand that it's important as a principles to have capacity to work together while recognizing partner-specific contributions, needing also different capacity building opportunities, and adhering to a defined coordination mechanisms. We need to establish a clear common vision, objectives involving all actors from beginning to end. Include those often left behind and be mutually respectful. This is about building trust. Collectively define clear roles and responsibilities and support transparent and long-term, really authentic participatory processes. Lastly, to ensure full accountability and engage in joint monitoring, evaluation, and learning. We call these principles the GAP UCLG Principles for Multi-Stakeholder Partnerships. These were originally outlined in the policy paper presented at the town hall and were refined based on inputs this week. However, this is only the beginning. The mayor of Subang Jaya Municipal Council of Malaysia, along the deputy mayor of Barcelona, have committed to help us further refine and finalize these GAP UCLG principles for multi-stakeholder partnerships. We welcome other mayors interested in this initiative to join us. Finally, the principles will be presented at the World Assembly during the World Urban Forum 10. We hope to see you there for us to ensure and work towards ensuring no one, no place, and no partner is left behind. Thank you.
Interpreters again, please bring a text, a copy of your text if you intend reading, please.
Heard these words echoed from so many of us in these last few days, and how wonderful to hear them articulated so very well by you and the community that you represent. Thank you very much, Hannes. We're now turning to our political colleagues, political leaders who are sitting with us on stage, and it's my really great honor to present to you the Lady Mayor of Tunis, who is going to specifically speak to the right to the city and participatory processes, providing access to opportunities for all, really leading very nicely from the inputs that we've just heard from our civil society colleagues. Over to you, Mayor.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci, Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure that I address you in the framework of this Congress, which presents an opportunity to exchange ideas and to share ideas, as well as showing solidarity. No, in all societies, today's society, we have social issues and collective challenges around various issues: education, environment, transport, health, and of course other more complex issues. For example, waste management, urbanization, at which public and private powers need to deal with and find responses, innovative solutions together for citizens and civil society. Now, so in the north and the south too, there's growing disillusion vis-à-vis government and the problems of corruption too, mismatch or disconnection between bureaucracy and the political class at the same time as with the persistence. There's a persistence of inequality, economic and social inequality. This persists, of course, as a problem. All these factors lead to the need to find solutions, innovative solutions, which can reform the public and private institutions to have a greater participation by citizens and participatory, transparent and open governance. Hence the importance of the role of the World Task Force. It's in this perspective that it's necessary to develop the opportunity to listen very, very carefully to our community and to forge our links with it by encouraging strategic planning in cities and in line of urban development at all levels, and including, of course, citizens in the planning processes as well as the decision-making process. In other terms, we need to insist on the participatory dimension of governance, and in particular at the local level. This is a chest which I have implemented already in Tunis when I was elected, because I believe in this passionately. Now, as a mayor of the capital and president of the National Federation of Tunisian Cities, I place all my efforts to be abreast, to be more involved in local life, basically in the definition of the implementation and the assessment of public local policies in order to improve living conditions and to guarantee people's services. I certainly hope that cities will become more involved in order to, at the same time, dynamize dialogue with central government to reinforce the role of the city itself and to encourage learning and know-how in the different municipalities at a national, regional, continental and world as well as local levels. This new local policies in Tunisia has something new and creates opportunities and hope in terms of development, social and economic participation at a local level too. Now, in this framework, it is necessary to reinforce our capacity building. We need to implement specific actions on the ground. We need to cooperate and exchange expertise and knowledge in order to allow local Tunisian groups to be included and sustainable and, above all, human for all its inhabitants. The Tunisian municipalities and their various associations, which I've mentioned, should be regarded in this framework as a key partner in all actions which contribute to a better governance at a local level. Now, the local power has responded to the issue of justice and regional disparities, as well the chronic pilfering of our natural wealth. And we should implement helping services, accompanying services of networking and training, coordinate efficacious negotiation between local and national governments needs to be done to defend common interests. And finally, we need to implement technical and financial international partners, particularly in order to facilitate coordination, the articulation, and the rolling out of different programs to the benefit of the communes. And the local policies in Tunisia brings hope, brings opportunities in terms of development, social and economic participation too. There are many challenges for all cities. We have the emergence of new challenges. World agendas such as the SDGs, for example, 2030, reflect the size of these deficits which we are faced with. Not only as cities, but also as regions, and in fact as an entire planet. To find solutions to these challenges, we need to roll out local policies and the regionals and governments and the private sector, all of us together, civil society too, and all stakeholders involved vis-à-vis financing of local development, because financing development, I think the World Task Force should join forces and accentuate our collaboration in order to define our future policies. Action program, we need to carry out the SDGs in order to have local governments to connect solidly with their citizens. Now, the role of the World Task Force in the definition of priorities and challenges and to search for solutions and the means whereby we can reach those solutions at a local level should be demanded. And so today, I commit myself in front of you. I should call for a reinforcement of these mechanisms and the necessary tools in order to better take on board the good working of this dynamics and to consolidate dialogue between institutions at a multi-level and exchange and reach consensus between the different stakeholders. Thus, as putting together a world platform is necessary to be more efficacious and to get better results. Now, according to a classic approach, the concept of cooperation for development, transferring things from the north to south, restructuring of technical and human resources of a public origin, either bilateral or multilateral, from the public to the private NGOs, looking for greater justice and equality in financial matters. And of course, we need to highlight the participatory approach, of course, and involving everyone. The force capacity building should touch all systems and should respond to requirements, should adapt to local conditions. Cities should to work together in symbiosis, and local associations representing most of the municipalities vis-à-vis public powers and have different parties defend the interests of their members and make sure of their solidarity and their conviviality and friendship when it comes to setting up strategic alliances between cities. And finally, I hope that this Congress will consolidate even more the municipal movement at an international level. And we hope that UCLG, as well as other organizations and the World Task Force, will continue to work towards having our voice heard all over the world. Thank you very much for your attention.
Merci beaucoup. I think it is just listening to the Lady Mayor here was just fantastic to hear, and coming from Africa as well fills me with pride and hope. As a president of a local government association of such a prominent country in North Africa, part of our continent, you have got it right. You understand the need for multi-level governance, for international cooperation, for acting and implementing on the ground, for listening and working with our civil society, private sector, cities together with each other, with all other levels of subnational governments. So I think Tunisia is going to go places. It is already going places, and is going to become a strong leading voice, specifically through you, in this global task force and in the World Assembly. Thank you very much, Lady Mayor. I'm now moving on directly. As we are moving ahead through the program, looking at time, to Mr. Sami Kanan, who is the Mayor of Geneva, who is specifically going to focus on the territorial approach. We've heard a little bit about the territorial approach already here, leaving no one and no place behind, and you said also no partners behind. So over to you. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you much again. I'm happy to be able to talk to you today. I'm not going to be very long because I could have said the same thing as my colleague from Tunis. She said it better than me. But of course, there's an important transition at issue here. The mayor of Tunis, which is the capital of Tunisia, we are on the right wavelength because you're just on the other side of the Mediterranean, and all our congratulations to you for what you're doing in Tunisia. The essential thing here is that local representatives, local officials have the day-to-day basis. We have also resources which are some less and not always properly valued. Civil society, we have different partners and associations and movements, NGOs, local expertise which exists in there and which should be mobilized so that we can find the sustainable solution to our challenges is to have people involved, and I'm heavy on participation. Each one in an urban community can make a contribution, and this should be and you will see has a role to play here in the diagnostic and the understanding of the problems and the search for solutions. And it's a cross-cutting approach. It's the fact that national governments, whatever stripe they are, even with the best will in the world, which is not always the case, don't recognize these grass-level problems and do the minimum to solve problems, believing that they can solve things at a distance. And we can't carry on with this. We have social movements all over the world. Populations no longer can stand this idea of corruption, of too much distance between grassroots and where the decisions are making. This mismatch, particularly in climate change. We need to converge in order to find solutions. We need partners. We need partnerships. We need to have people near the ground, and this is vital. At the same time, to talk about local partners. We're aware, and UCLG is playing its role to the full. We need to federate our group together for the world because our realities are different, but the challenges are the same. By working together, we can have our voice heard at a local level. Although this seems obvious to us, this is something difficult, of course. We need to make progress at international level. We have have a very strong level with large United Nations organizations in Geneva, in my city, and we can feel these large global organizations go to local officials to deal with problems on the ground at the grassroots levels. National states don't always look kindly on the way things are going. In Switzerland, we are a federalist country, as you know, so we are lucky. But this is not the case in other countries in the world. But I believe in the long term, the future of the world is not global, it's local. And of course, we need to improve the capacity of local governments to resolve the problems. We need to move forwards in this, and we can see what local governments are integrated, more and more integrated in the multilateral system. But the multilateral system, of course, should be transparent and democratic and participatory. But this is threatened by certain states who want to play the power game. And again, we have we have multinational companies who continue to play the short-term profits card, but we need to come down to growth, and we need to be allied to NGOs or other movements like yours. This is vital. We should continue together, working so that our voice is heard, and we need to be given the wherewithal in order to do what we need to do. And of course, and as we said, leaving no one, no place, and no partners behind. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup. So we hear our mayors loudly and clearly. Us as city networks and regional networks gathered here today, we hear you. And I think the Global Task Force needs to take very strong cognizance of the messages that are coming through so consistently here. So thank you very much, Mayor. As you say, you are in a country where there's federalism deeply embedded. It's not the case everywhere. Let me now turn to another mayor from another part of the world. Also a beautiful lady mayor of Iriga, Madeleine Yorobe, who is going to speak to us about the need for urban-rural linkages and by addressing urban-rural linkages, we are able to ensure a cohesive development strategy which will result in more resilient cities able to face not just natural disasters, but also man-made crises. Because we know that humans are influencing the planetary systems at a scale never seen before. So over to you, Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello. I hope everyone can hear me. Good morning. We say magandang umaga in the Philippines. Actually, 2 days ago, we just had a typhoon. The name is Ramon. So is there any Ramon here? Then on the 21st, we will be welcoming another typhoon by the name of Sarah. So we normally wait for 26 to 28 typhoons in a year. And just last year, just New Year, we also had another typhoon, which is named Usman. It's not really super typhoon, but it brought a lot of rainwater. Imagine from 15 millimeters, it went up to 22 to 25 millimeters. So the entire central business district is inundated. However, I just really want to share to everyone that the work of a mayor is really daunting. Very, very challenging, but fulfilling in a way, because once you achieve something, at least you know that someday when you look back, you will say, darn, I did a good thing. Imagine there are a lot of aspects that we have to deal with. We have financial, disaster, peace and order, health, youth, education, everything. We have to take care of that. But we also have to get to choose one priority or two priorities, but not to the extent of overlooking other aspects. When I opted to run for mayor, I was very young then, and by the way, I am the first lady mayor in our city. It was really, well, I have experienced a lot of discrimination. They said, oh, what a woman. Woman will become a mayor in your city. Probably, women are vacillates. They change their minds from time to time. And then, what am I going to do there that I'm very young and I don't know anything how to run a city? But when you love your work, it's always a continuous learning process. So that's why you really have to become a member of UCLG. You have to become a member to outsource knowledge, because there's no really monopoly of knowledge. So what we did was, we are very poor, by the way. During that time, we only had 103 internal revenue allotment, 103 million. Our local revenue was only 12 million, and our asset was only 200 million. When we approach commercial banks, they don't want to lend us money because we only have 200 million asset. But now, after several years of innovative programs and capacitating people and encouraging everyone, because since there are 100% community participation already, we went up to 570 million IRA, internal revenue allotment, 150 million local revenue, and our asset is 1.5 billion now. Yeah, it's a daunting task, but it's a big challenge for all of us. My principle is, you have to do the best you can, because 3 years is very short. There's a limit in our, there's a term limit, by the way. So after 3 years, you have to be fast and you have to be prudent, because you can never tell if you will get reelected or not. So you might do the best you can, and then again, I would like to reiterate, at least after your term, you can say you did a good job. So basically, we focus more on disaster because, as I've said, we have 26 to 28 typhoons. We have another one coming. And our super typhoon, there was an incident wherein we had 2 super typhoons in a year. We have Typhoon Milenio, 190 kilometers per hour. Then after 6 months, another super typhoon came, and that was 280 kilometers per hour. Killing a lot of constituents in our neighboring municipalities. And we were the center of the eye of the typhoon. And that was only the time when I realized that once you're the eye of the typhoon, once they hit you 280 kilometers per hour, after an hour, it will go back again. It's much more stronger. So imagine 280 kilometers per hour, then after an hour, it went back 300 kilometers per hour. So it devastated the entire city. And we had no electricity for 4 months. But everything has a trade-off. The lucky part of that was we are abundant with water. We have a lot of springs, so we have no problem with water. And our water is AA class. So you just go to the faucet and then put a glass on it. It's AA water. So that's the trade-off. We don't have fuel, but at least we have water. But so we concentrated more on that. And then when I learned about Sunday Framework, actually I really don't know what Sunday Framework was all about before, and thank you to UCLG, it was introduced to me. But however, Sunday Framework is very generic. It has no framework. So what happened then was there was this organization, this council, with a tripartite MOA agreement among a private corporation and the National Disaster Risk Reduction Management Office and the cities, 11 cities at that. We are the pilot cities. And then we established this framework, and it helps us a lot. This was the time that we learned that, you have to get CIDRA, the Climate Disaster Risk Assessment. You have to incorporate it in your comprehensive land use plan. And then you have to capacitate the villages because we have barangays. We call them barangays. We have 36 villages. And then we organized also the entire committee in the respective barangays or villages. So that's the most important thing you have to capacitate. And perhaps by following that framework, that's the reason why we always get zero casualty. So we hope that there will be no casualties. That's the most important thing. There should be no deaths, zero death, and hopefully we can encourage more cities to follow that framework because it really helped a lot. So to everyone, hopefully, the pressure of being a mayor is really, really tough. But we said we cannot do it alone. Local authorities, we cannot do it alone. So we need 100 full community participation, and we have to encourage everyone to move. And all the cities, we are very thankful to the other cities. Sister cities, we have established international ties. International Bond, because they also helped us a lot, not only in financial, but technical aspect as well. So to everyone, thank you very much. Good morning.
Mayor Madeline, I can just say that from you we've heard something, a glimpse into what may be the future for all of us if we are not able to address climate change in the next decade and keep below those figures that we know we agreed to in Paris. And we also know that it's not going to be at the national level where these achievements are going to be made. It is amongst us. It is strong leaders sitting around tables like this, going back home, doing things, getting prepared, planning, hoping, doing what they can, the best they can, being as prepared as they can. Because at the moment, we should also realize that the climate trajectory at the moment, scientists are telling us, looks towards a world of at least 3 degrees, not 1.5 degree or even 2 degrees, if you look at all the current commitments that came after Paris. So even if all those commitments are implemented today, we are still not keeping the world below the 2-degree threshold. So we need to step up. And as we see, it often needs to happen at the city level. And hats off to the cities that are the front runners who are already facing this on a daily basis, the unpredictability of weather, the intensity of storms, and being prepared and being as brave as you are and realizing that you've got to involve your community so strongly in preparing for Sarah and all the others that will follow. And thank you very much for what you do. I think you inspire many, many mayors facing similar issues already today around the world. Thank you for what you do. I'm now turning to our last speaker on the panel, and another lady, another brave front-runner lady, Ms. Gunn-Marit Helgesen, Councillor of Telemark and President of the Norwegian Association of Local and Regional Governments, and also the co-president of CMR. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, may I first thank the host, the municipality and Salga, for inviting us to Durban. It has been a fantastic week here in wonderful South Africa. It's my first time. I really love it. So thank you so much. And I'm from Norway, very up north. Yeah, it's a long way. And we are so different, but we face the same challenges. And I think today's biggest challenges for local and regional governments are twofold. First of all, we are experiencing the impact of the global problems, and we have to solve them at local level, quite often without little support and assistance from central government. We need to rethink the way we create and manage public policies. We need to practice a more collaborative and participatory way if we want to be successful. And that's why it's so important to share experience and inspire each other. In our cities in Europe, we have the Thursdays for Climate, where young people want to be part of the solution and ask for a change. These are challenges, but also opportunities to reach out to the people living in our communities, to include them in the solution-finding process, and to innovate in the way we do public policy. And we need to get everybody on board, supporting us in our efforts to lead this and the next generations into a future that allows a similar level of quality of life as we enjoy today, with the consciousness that the resources of our planet are limited. We will take the lead. However, considering the major tasks ahead of us, we urge national governments and international institutions to recognize us, local and regional governments, as partners to empower and involve us in the changes in all stages of design, implementation, and evaluation of policies that have an impact on our regions, cities, towns, and municipalities. Furthermore, local and regional governments need to have the adequate financial resources to deliver the tasks they are assigned. In many countries, local finances are not fit for purpose. So we need to address this issue and dare to explore new, innovative ways to finance forward-looking, sustainable and long-term investments in our communities to adapt and prepare for climate change, digitalization of our private, professional and public life, globalization of both private and public areas, etc. The International Municipal Fund, launched by UCLG, UNCDF and FMDF, recently is a step into the right direction, and we should explore more instruments, also in cooperation with private partners and investors. In addition to this, many countries in Europe have to handle the challenge of an aging society. People get older, and that is fantastic, which is on the one hand positive, but on the other hand, this has consequences on our health and care systems, the infrastructure, the labor market, and again, the finances. So I understand that we share quite a few of these challenges with colleagues in other parts of the world, and therefore it is so important to increase our decentralized cooperation, join forces and raise our voice towards the international institutions. Together we are stronger, so let's continue our engagement with our partners in the Global Task Force, striving for impact at international and then also at our continental and national levels. So I would like to encourage all local leaders to be brave, take the leadership. And I would like to end this very brief intervention to state President Obama in his State of the Union speech, because he said, I believe in change because I believe in you, and so do I. Thank you so much for your attention.
A huge ask and a huge opportunity, I think, for the Global Task Force and for this World Assembly. Thank you for this very clear and strong message. What we saw coming out here is about financing and also not necessarily looking at outside financing all the time, also for the developing world, but looking at how you rethink and you reshape your own budgets and your own financial processes to address the needs. And the issues of aging societies is wonderful, as you say, indeed, but the social aspects of it, getting our cities ready, are our cities geared and built and wonderful places for older people to live their lives well into the 80s, the 90s, the 100s. I believe they say that the child that's going to be 200 years old has already been born. So the world is changing in many different ways, and the Global Task Force, I very much appreciate the fact that you focus on the opportunity that we have in taking hands and working together and taking these collective challenges and turn them into opportunities. So we are a little bit over time, but I'm going to open the floor just for one or two questions, comments to the panel. Please address it to a specific member and be as brief as you can, if there are any. I think there is a microphone that we can use. Do I see? Yeah, I see a lady's hand here, and I see a gentleman's hand over there. One more, maybe. Anyone? Let's take these two and see if anything else burning comes up, please.
Thank you very much. I'm a representative of Civil Society of Older Persons, so I appreciate the mention, finally, of the growing aging community in cities. But we have to make sure we treat us not only as human rights holders, but as contributors to society. I think too many governors and local authorities think of us only as financial liabilities, and they forget that we have trillions of US dollars worth of value. I'm 74, we're not giving up.
And if I may add, experience and wisdom. A philosophy professor once told me, don't even try to think about being a philosopher before you're well over 50. So if I could just add to that. Yes, Mayor Manuel.
Thank you very, very much. First of all, I want really to second what...
Just a second. Let's just get that microphone on. for the translation.
Thank you. Well, I was just saying that I wanted, first of all, to thank and second my mayor colleagues who have shown leadership and are on the panel showing that really the future is local. I was very happy to hear that phrase, and also what my sister, the mayor of Tunis, mentioned here about the unique importance of local government in this process. But coming from ICLEI, I wanted here also to share our commitment and also to confirm the availability that we, as an institution that brings more than 1,700 local governments, to support these mechanisms, because we think that it's very important that we technically support this task force, but also the World Assembly, to equip it so that it is able of delivering. Because now is the time for action. It's not just talk. It's important. We as mayors, most of the time, we meet in several parts of the world, but we need to show results to our community. When we go back, we need to show that, look, I went to this meeting and this is what is happening. It's very important that we are able of bringing back the results of these discussions. Finally, I want also to stress that it's very important that we strengthen the governance and the institutional processes, both at World Assembly, but also at this great task force. And we hope that by reinforcing the institutional process, we are contributing and we are leaping up in this process of consolidating action towards climate change. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We're going to wrap up. I saw one more hand. We'll take this as the final comment. Just the lady in front of us here.
Muy buenos días.
Good morning. One comment. The first speaker said that citizens and mayors are interconnected, connected with the conflicts of the society. I believe now more than ever, when we see social explosions in different parts of the world, including my own country, the role of mayors is absolutely basic and essential, because this enables us to channel the concerns of citizenships even when it's much more difficult to get to the political class. I mean, for example, parliaments and the upper echelons. That's one thing. The role of the mayors is absolutely essential. Sometimes we have very conflicted situations at a political level, true, and we need to have a united voice of mayors in contact with higher levels of government. The second point, in order to strengthen governance, as was mentioned by the last person who spoke, I believe it's essential that mayors should also apply this issue of civic education to all those people who live in a community, so that each and every one of us can take care of our own communities and take care and cherish democracy in our countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If I can just ask the panel if there's anything burning you want to still say as a wrap-up from anybody? Are we good? All right, then I would say thank you very much for the participation from the floor, and especially from our wonderful panel. It was a pleasure to sit up here with you and engage. Thank you.
Please stay in the room for the second panel.
Merci, thank you. I really loved you. It's practical.
We're going to start immediately with the second panel.
Thank you.
We're going to start immediately with our second panel, and let me introduce you Mr. Greg Munro, who is the Secretary General of one of our sister organizations, the Commonwealth Local Governments Forum. Floor is yours, Greg.
Right, can we
I'll take this one. I'll take the one off the director. There we go. That's good. That's better.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Right. Can we get the show on the road, please? We're doing driving policy innovation from the bottom up. We have two of our town hall constituency reps. So Mr. Billy Cobbett of the Cities Alliance, Director of Cities Alliance. Mr. Nelson Jr., the Coordinator of Polis Institute. And our speakers, so Dave Cole, the Mayor of Dunedin and the President of the Local Government New Zealand is already on the stage. Ms. Rohi Lowe, Mayor of Bunjol. Ms. Martinez, President of Diputación of Barcelona. Mr. Patrick Klugman, Deputy Mayor of Paris. And the Mayor of Ouagadougou. Wherever you want. 1, 2, 3, 1, third last on the list, third last on Dave.
Interpreting the English booth, if you're listening and if you're one of the panel members and you intend to speak, to read a document, please, the interpreters would need a copy of it. Thank you very much.
Two.
Right, the Mayor. Hi. Just have a sit there. Great. And that's it. Right, this session is on driving policy innovation from the bottom up and sustainability of policies when it's driven from the needs of our communities. So we're going to start first with our two town hall constituency representatives. So on my right is Mr. Nelson Jr., who's the coordinator of Polis Institute, to give us just a brief report from his town hall before we go to Billy Cobbett.
Good morning. I go to present the key recommendations we have regarding the town hall, the right to the city. We have it tomorrow. Yesterday was amazing town hall with many mayors and the dialogue with many colleagues from civil society. And the first recommendation is the right to the city should be considered as a new paradigm to address the major challenges in cities and human sentiments, considering the rapid urbanization, poverty reduction, social exclusion, and environmental risk that call for decisive actions and new policy priorities by national, regional, and the local governments. Also, dialogue is very important to discuss about responsibilities. The right to the city brings responsibilities not only for the governments, local governments, authorities, but also from the inhabitants, from the civil society and the organizations. Also, other points we discussed is about the extension of the one platform for the right to the city. When you talk about human sentiments and city, you are talk about different typologies of territories. We are talking about metropolis, cities, villages, town, institution organized as a local unity of district administration, municipal or metropolitan character. It includes urban space and rural or semi-rural environment as a part of this territory. The other point we discussed in the recommendation, the city should adopt a creative local government program or agenda with the components of the right to the city, like on a matrix. The main key message from the concept of the right to the city is a city a common good. It is creative local government's program agenda should include the components: a city free of discrimination, a city of inclusive citizenship, a city with enhanced political participation, a city of gender equality, a city with equality of public space, a city with inclusive social economy, a city with cultural diversity, and a city with sustainable inclusive rural-urban linkage. The other point we discussed in the dialogue is very important. We are building not only partnerships, we need to go beyond the partnerships. We need to build coalitions, alliances, networks among local governments, social vulnerable groups, civil society, private sector, academic professionals to co-produce the cities and the human sentiments in the perspective of the human rights and the right to the city. Also is important we promote educate cities, exchange technology. One colleague bring the experience of the public library in the cities. We think is promote educate cities is very strategic for the perspective of the agenda, the right to the city. In the last point, we bring our recommendation for we have steps, like here in this Congress, where talk cities are listening. We think cities are listening right to the city, bringing voices, the people live in the cities, the civil society, the authorities, different sectors of society, need to discuss, to listen, to dialogue the right to the city, the perspective on agenda, one program. Cities are learning right to the city. Is the next step. We exchange the experience we are ready from the governments, from civil society, to transform our cities for the better way. And the cities are implementing right to the city. This is the main recommendations we bring here for this dialogue. Yeah, I think this experience at Town Hall was very amazing, because in my opinion, should continue. It should be more strong the next activities we have between civil society and local governments and with UCLG. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next Town Hall representative is Mr. Billy Cobbett, the Director of Cities Alliance.
Thanks, Greg. First, I want to thank UCLG and record our appreciation for the space that you've created through this Town Hall track. Both Greg, the chair here, and Amelia sit on the board of the Cities Alliance, and at our last meeting in Monrovia, they challenged us to organize our constituency and deliver a position paper and set of recommendations on addressing informality in cities, and that's what I'm going to briefly speak to. So we used our own non-governmental organization constituency within the Cities Alliance, which comprised the AFC Foundation, Habitat for Humanity International, WeGo, which is Women in the Informal Economy, Globalizing and Organizing, and Slum Dwellers International. And the paper I present now and the recommendations which were discussed at the Town Hall yesterday are an outcome of that process. So very briefly, the challenge of informality is actually well recognized in the global agendas. It is recognized in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, in the Paris Climate Agreement, and in the New Urban Agenda. And we further drew on the work of the Special Rapporteur on the right to adequate housing. Just to be clear, when we're talking about informality, there are, in effect, two elements to this. The most common one that everyone understands is that of shelter, which is the growth of informal settlements stroke slums in many cities around the world. But there's also the employment aspect, which is the informal generation of jobs. And for the first figure, for the first category, it's approximately 1 billion people. And in the second category, it's those people plus more. It's about 2 billion of the world's population are informally employed. And so we're not talking about a minor policy issue here. We're talking about, actually, for many cities, the bulk of the city. Because in the past 2 to 3 decades, the bulk of city growth under current policies is dominated by unplanned growth, informal growth, and incremental growth. And this is most evident, in particular, in small and medium-sized cities, in secondary or intermediary cities. So we made a set of assumptions and recommendations. Our key message, which will not be unfamiliar to this audience, is that successful cities cannot be built through the exclusion of informal settlements, nor the citizens seeking opportunities to improve the lives of their children and their fellow citizens. And indeed, more than that, at the local level, the very essence of city development, certainly in all of our experience, revolves around the quality and strength of the relationships established between the public authorities, individual residents and their organizations, and especially the urban poor, and private and non-state actors. Therein lies the key. However, you will know when I say this is not always the response we get from all mayors and all local governments. And this is still very much a contested terrain. So therefore, we made a set of recommendations, and I'm just going to draw out the 5 central recommendations and ways forward. And the first is the central recommendation is that we recommend that local and regional governments recognize the residents of informal areas as full and equal citizens, deserving the same dignity, respect, and opportunities offered to all citizens in that city and in all cities. Secondly, the inclusion of all informal areas in city planning processes and the generation of the necessary data to ensure effective planning, and indeed a common understanding of that same city. Third, the importance of strengthening the capacity of local and regional governments and institutions to give effect to this citywide planning. And then the last 2 recommendations to local and regional governments is, fourth, facilitating public engagement mechanisms to ensure that all citizens have a meaningful say in matters that affect them, and to ensure that all parties recognize their rights and fulfill their responsibilities. And so both sides of the table are recognized. And finally, with specific reference to the urban poor, the policy recommends that local and regional governments make provision for all residents to have access to land for housing, settlement, and other forms of property with secure tenure and access to essential services, and, on the second leg, ensure the access of informal workers to public services and public spaces. This sounds like city government good sense, and it is. But in many of the cities in which we work, applying these recommendations would lead to a radical transformation of the relationship and the lives of citizens. And we commend the recommendations to the Global Task Force. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you, Billy. Thank you, Nelson. I think the town hall process that into some of, or especially for our topic in terms of driving policy, is very, very important. And I agree with Nelson that we must continue to do this going forward. So for our respondents then, we have 5 speakers. I'm going to ask each of you to try and limit yourselves to 5 minutes because we are quite a long way behind in time. Having heard just those two examples, can you just, from your city and your network, can you think of some recommendations and on driving bottom-up policy innovation? So please think of that thought while you're doing a presentation about what recommendations we can do to support ground-up policy development and including our communities. So first I'm going to go to Dave Cole, who is the President of the Local Government New Zealand and who has a lot of experience as Mayor of Dunedin in New Zealand. Dave.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. What I'm going to speak about is based on my experience as the Mayor of Dunedin for 9 years. I actually stood down in October, so I am no longer the Mayor there. It's my experience, or our experience, in involving the entire community in developing the policies that are driving the community forward, the city forward, and putting the values, deciding what values and what vision we want into the future. A little bit of context. What I must say is that I don't think that we have a monopoly on this understanding. We've learned that we're not going to be successful as a community and as a city unless we do involve the whole community, but I'm well aware that other cities around the world have explored these mechanisms as well. A little bit of context for the New Zealand situation. New Zealand councils, local bodies, have only one very restricted source of funding, and that is property tax. And we are required to spend it in a very disciplined way by way of developing an annual plan and a long-term plan. The long-term plan goes over 10 years and is refreshed every 3, but the annual plan is where we put out what we are intending to spend in the budget for the year, and we are required to some extent, especially when there's significant changes, to consult with the community. So every year the council goes out to the community and consults and invites submissions on the proposed spending in the proposed annual plan. So councils in New Zealand, councils' work largely revolves around the annual plan, which is the budget, and what they intend to spend the money on, and what's called the district plan, which is the plan for how the city is going, or the community is going to grow geographically. But if the spending on projects that are put into the long-term plan and the annual plan are just decided on an ad hoc basis every year, then you don't have any continuity. And one of the questions that we have asked of ourselves, or we asked of ourselves some years ago, was what do we really want our community and our city to look like in 20 years? What will we need it to look like in 20 years in various aspects? Not just geographically, not just where we want to have more development, more residential or commercial development, but what do we want it to be like, or think it will need to be like, in terms of economic development, in terms of how we look after the environment, in terms of our social well-being of our community. And that question really demands more of us than just an annual plan that we refresh every year. What it requires of us is a vision, a strategy. And in our case, in Dunedin's case, we set about developing a set of strategies, a strategic framework to answer that question. And what we learned was that there was no point in even trying to do it, because we wouldn't get it to stick if we didn't involve the whole community in developing that strategic vision going forward. So we went out to the community. In some cases, the council initiated the process, for instance, around economic development, which was the first strategy that we decided to develop. And we went to the various stakeholders and the big players in the community and developed that economic development strategy. In other instances, it was the community that came to the council. And in terms of our arts and culture strategy, the arts community in our city came to us and said, our community needs a strategic vision here, and we can help with that. So in fact, the council in that instance was led by the community in developing the strategy going forward. And the other instance that I can think of where it was a partnership was in terms of the environment, where we went to our first people, the Māori people of our community, and said, you are the ones that have always had guardianship, kaitiakitanga, as we call it, of this environment. So we should partner, the council and the Māori community, in developing an environment strategy. And over a 5 or 6 year period, we developed a strategic framework of about 8 major strategies: social wellbeing, economic development, environment, arts and culture, transportation, parks and leisure, and developed that so that they all interacted with one another. They mutually supported one another, but more to the point, they provided a basis on which to assess the viability of proposals around projects on which we would be spending money. In other words, if something came up, a proposal came up in the annual plan to spend money on a certain project, the first question we ask is, to what extent does this proposal further the aims of the strategies that we've already agreed on as a community? So that's the first advantage. The second advantage is that such a strategic vision actually lasts longer than just one political cycle, so that there's actually buy-in across political cycles and you don't have radical change from one election to the other when you've got a strategy in place. And the end result of that is that the whole community owns the strategy, the whole community has bought into it and has actually helped develop it. And I think that, just to close, I think that what's important about this is the understanding that it doesn't just apply at a local government level. It needs to apply at a national level too, where national governments need to understand that if they don't involve local government and local communities in prioritising the way forward for the whole national community, then their proposals and their visions won't stick either. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I think it's a really nice example of locally driven and inclusive policy making. Can we go to the Mayor of Banjul? Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Honorable Secretary General Emilia Sachs, the outgoing President of UCLG Parks, Tau, our host, the Mayor of Durban, His Worship, Mr. Kaunda, my colleagues, mayors and deputy mayors, donor partners, the EU and UN, members of the civil societies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, all other protocols respectfully observed. It is with great honor and pride that I take to the podium and address this August Assembly on behalf of my colleagues, the Lord Mayors and Deputy Mayors represented here under the umbrella of our distinguished organization, UCLG. It is with great pride that I take this opportunity to thank the UCLG and its partners for bringing us to the remarkable city of Durban to hold this important assembly. During the past days, we have put minds and heads together to adequately define the global agenda of cities and regions for the coming years and to develop inputs for the upcoming international processes. We have also had the opportunity to share progress in the implementation of SDGs and their impacts at local level at a time where we had the occasion to show the evolution of the UCLG within the framework of its 15th anniversary. The past few days have been great. A lot has been learned and achieved, and not only that, but we have been united under one umbrella, speaking the same language, and reaching out to fulfill our obligation to the very people that elected us into office. Our solidarity has over the years been impressive. In Senegal, we have been able to secure the release of former mayor of Dakar, His Worship, Halifa Saleh from prison. And I wish to thank all mayors who played their part in this noble undertaking. On a personal note, let me thank members of the civil societies, the EU and other donor agencies for their active participation in our drive to fulfill the SDGs under the 2030 agenda. The theme of this assembly, Cities Are Listening, will only be a question left alone, will not only be a question left alone, but we will give a satisfactory answer that will be the voice of the citizens that put us in office. On that note, let me thank my party, the United Democratic Party of the Gambia, for giving me the chance to be the flag bearer during the mayoral elections in 2017. It made me history as the results make me the first female mayor of the capital city of Banjul. I wish to single out Her Worship, the Mayor of Dakar, who I refer to as my mother and role model, Madam Sohan Wadini, as well as the UCLG focal point in Dakar, Senegal, Madam Ramatoulaye Sow. To our host, the Mayor of Durban, words are not enough to thank you for the wonderful treatment you have accorded us. The food has been great, and I have added an extra 5 kilos. The smiles from everyone that you put at our disposal here, from the policemen, drivers, waiters and waitresses, etc., will have a lasting impression on us, and we thank you for everything. As local government officials and representatives of our people, we will continue to take ownership and establish national frameworks for the achievements of the 17 goals. UCLG, especially UCLG Africa, will continue to ensure that cities and local governments contribute to these national frameworks and to take responsibility for follow-up and review of the progress made in implementing these goals on the ground, which will require quality, accessible, and timely data collection. Let me thank, on a personal level, the EU for its support to the city of Banjul in our drive to become a smart city. I also call on my colleagues to continue our networking and to assist where possible those countries that fall short of the means to improve upon the lives of their people. Lastly, Mr. Moderator, but not the least, I would like to thank all members of Rafaela chapters across the globe for their massive input in reaching out to people at the grassroots level. There is no mountain so high that we as a team cannot climb. The future is bright, and so is our vision. To Emilia Sass, our Secretary General, I'm short of words to thank you for always encouraging me as a young female mayor from a developing country, giving me a platform to learn and work. Today, my city is well known and my country is on the limelight. Emilia, I sincerely want to thank you. Your team, especially Fernandez. I cannot really thank you people enough. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, on that note, I want to end by saying that the bottom-up approach of governance is very important. It encourages transparent, inclusiveness, awareness, and encourages citizens to take ownership and committed of what they own. Remember, Mr. Moderator, we are all committed for the localization of the SDGs and the rights to cities. We have learned a lot here that we want also to see them implemented. Yes, we are committed, and we want to see that these things are implemented, not only written on the paper, but to make sure that we work hard on it and have them implemented. We cannot go through, or we cannot have them implemented without taking the bottom-up approach of governance. This is where we will have the collaboration of the grassroots women, youths, civil societies, and other partners. On that note again, Mr. Moderator, thank you all for your kind attention. My name is Rohi Yatu Malik Lo. I am the Lord Mayor of Banjul. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Mayor. And I think we all echo your words in thanking UCLG and Amelia for our organization for this Congress. Can we go to Ms. Nuria Martinez from Barcelona on my left?
Hola. Well, good morning to you, and good morning to all mayors and mayoresses and all representatives of the different local and regional governments, as well as representatives of different organizations. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the invitation to participate in this World Assembly of local and regional governments. It's a real pleasure for me, as well as an opportunity to state publicly once more again my personal commitment and my institutional commitment to an improvement in world governance. This is the first time I've taken part in this World Forum as President of the Barcelona Provincial Council, also as the Mayoress of Hospitalet, next to Barcelona. And this first contact, direct, has given me the opportunity to see at first hand the importance of what's being done and the work which is being done at UCLG in the defense not only of local government, but also in favor of the planet as a whole. But as the moderator has asked us, I shall come up with the first recommendation, i.e. it's a contribution to food for thought, so to speak, and this but the lack of representativeness of women in governing bodies in this institution. We're very far. This representation is very far from the aims of gender equality, which we have all written down, we've all signed up to. They are to be found in SDG number 5, and I believe here that we are very far from the challenge which we've taken on board in order to put this to rights. Therefore, that's my first recommendation. Let's put this down, let's flag this. We want to overcome this inequality, at least for the next Congress. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we live not only this challenge of lack of equality in gender terms, but also other challenges like climate emergency, the increase of poverty, and an increase in inequalities. These are global challenges which have a direct impact on all our territories. And since we are political, elected politicians, we should put an end to this. World organizations who have the plans which have been approved by governments all over the world lay down these challenges and say that if we really and truly want to survive, we need to act. We need to act now. Local governments have taken the message on board. We've taken very good note, and we have taken on board as our own these challenges. And we are living this positively. We're seeing it as a great opportunity because it's our territory which are drying up. It's our territories which are being flooded. Our cities and our citizens who are becoming falling ill or are becoming intoxicated. And so we have a great deal of work to do. We have a great deal of enthusiasm, but we also need something very important: more decentralization, the proper institutional framework, and something even more important, better finance. Without this, we could make headway, but we will not do so at the speed or at the rate which is possible. We also need to feel to be accompanied. We don't need to be on our own. Local governments don't want to be alone. Other levels of governance need to be with us. We are acting. We need to act together, better and more, to be more articulated, more coordinated. Shared decisions-making, inclusive decision-making, more responsibilities which are shared and inclusive too, and in any case. We need a governance system which is multi-level and which will also be effective. In addition, as has been said before, we have two other stakeholders. One is citizens, ordinary citizens, our neighbours basically. Those are the first actors. Second, no less important, economic sectors and the social sectors too. Only if we all work together can we reach sustainable development, which is real. I'd like to conclude with a summary of what I've just said. I.e., first of all, let's go from theory to practice, to action. Let's go from theory to practice, I repeat, and let's act all together. The different governments, administrations, citizens, economics and social sectors. This is a World Assembly here of local and regional governments. And finally, I'd like to insist, let us not forget SDG number 5, gender equality. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you and welcome to the Mayor of Ouagadougou. So can we now please go to Mr. Patrick Klugman as the Deputy Mayor of Paris.
Buenos días a todos.
Good morning, everyone.
French is one of the spoken language of UCLG. Déjà merci.
Okay, so thanks to you as moderator and UCLG for organizing this panel this morning, which is an extremely important one. Now, before going direct to the subject, I have one thing to say. Where are we in local democracy? In the organized expression? Because here we are at a historical moment. Never ever have cities as such, never have they been so powerful and so listened to. And I'm happy to say this morning from here in UCLG in Durban. Because if cities have never been listened to so much, is that they have been able to get together, to get organized, to communicate. And the first framework here is our organization. This is the first stop. A couple of weeks ago, in fact, we were in the mayor of Paris in Copenhagen, with another organization called the C40, which is another city organization. And there, at this meeting, we visited with the Secretary General of the United Nations, who visited us. He came to the summit of a cities organization, unheard of. And Mr. Gutierrez, that's the name of the SG, took us to one side and said, I represent states, i.e. the General Assembly of the United Nations. However, states today will be there today and will be there forever. However, from now on they are powerless about certain things. At a multilateral organizational level, we need to have infra-state or lower than states, which represent governance and democracy. And he turns towards the city. He did this with his UCLG regularly to say, without cities, we are powerless because we are cut off from an essential part of democratic legitimacy, of the vitality of expression of citizens, which are cities. Now, if I go back on the other side, I'd like to say, as a city like Paris, what do we do to communicate with our citizens in order to feel and take on board what citizens feel and to give them some power, to empower them, so that power circulates in network and we communicate. So we have an innovative project. We started this in 2014, which was to give 5% of the municipal budget of Paris, which is something like 80 million euros per year, to give it directly, decide on what we call a participatory budget for citizens. This budget people said this is impossible. And of course it was difficult. The people who had to be convinced was the government. They had to have the technical means and consultation means, and district by district, neighbourhood by neighbourhood, we organised this consultation, and indeed, after 1 year, and then 2, and now 3 years, citizens get together. They said they want for this street, what they want for that park, what amenities they want for that car park. This needs to be closed off, this needs to be opened up, the importance of sports, and this budget has been voted on, it's been decided on, and using intelligence at a local level, i.e. local officials, i.e. people at the neighbourhood level, and it works extremely well. This means that in a country where we've seen tremendous social unrest, i.e. the yellow jackets, at a local level, in Paris at least, I'm not saying that the Parisians are happy with all this, some of them are not. This is not the case in other French cities either, but we have a permanent dialogue with them, and we give them back the power to take initiative without being dispossessed of what we can do as a local government in order to transform the city of Paris. I believe that this kind of initiative, and we've exchanged this with many cities in the country, is one of the key elements for local democracy to be nearer citizens, so that the city is always the first expression of the vitality of citizens, and that thanks to the networking of the networks in the city, we receive what citizens want and think and feel at a closer and closer level, so that we don't have this outburst of unrest which we've seen in the past, which is inefficient in itself. I'd just like to give you this idea of what I call citizens' democracy in Paris. However, we have many other initiatives too, always working in the same direction, which means that citizens can talk with their elected officials. And in my sense, this is one of the keys. Each city, of course, has to do it in its own way, according to traditions and its capability, both political and legal. But this, we cannot avoid this. We cannot say no. And the more the cities move towards their citizens, the more powerful they are, and the more we should continue to organize amongst ourselves. This is what I believe the role of the city is, to be the intermediate link between the citizens, and thanks to UCLG we can go up to the state level and beyond the state level. That's what I wanted to say. I'm not going to say any more, but I'd like to thank my entire team again for recognizing our honorary president, Mr. Paxton, who was mentioned last night before we elected the next president. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much. Can we move on to our last speaker, the Mayor of Ouagadougou?
Bonjour tout le monde.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to also thank, I'm going to speak in French too. I'd like to thank the organizers of this panel for inviting me. I apologize for arriving slightly late, but I shall talk about financing, local financing, and how to optimize it. As Mr. Klugman has just said, our cities have never been as powerful as they are, nor and if they are powerful, is they're taken on board the challenges of urbanization. And this leads them to come up with a great deal of planning for amenities, infrastructures, mobility, housing, and also to be resilient against the climate change, as well as looking at employment and all aspects affecting the city. This is why we local officials wanted to change our modus operandi completely when dealing with today's modern cities and dealing with our citizens too. Vis-à-vis finance, we cannot continue to depend on classic resources imposed in the old way, particularly in Africa. What is this classic schema? Well, we're the state, we have donors who have certain long and cumbersome procedures to get money, and we're aware, of course, these processes are not going to resolve our issues. And so in order to have a real successful urban transformation, now this urban tradition should not leave anyone behind. Even the most vulnerable people, i.e. young people and women, should not be left behind. So we, as local officials, we need to be innovative and rethink our strategies and our financial tools. Now, being innovative does not simply mean inventing things, but we should also take inspiration from what's been done elsewhere. I copy good practices from other cities in the world, or even from states, or even from the financial sector. So, financial innovation cannot be looked at on its own in a siloed fashion. We need to break out and cooperate with financial stakeholders, have common working practices, and to make them understand our needs and to make the most of the opportunities given to us. I'd like to reiterate my greetings to the initiative taken by the UCLG concerning financing and the FMDV, such as the International Fund for Investment of Municipalities, which would make money available to cities. The fund which is now being created by the UCLG, the African Fund, devoted to the financing of local governments, and the community practices which will enable us to exchange best practices between each other and with financial sources. With the FMDV and the other organizations, the program which we're going to launch on decentralization of local financing in 10 countries in Western Africa will come up with some innovative things. This will include the networking between cities and investors for training about new ways of financing, and the implementation of legal framework adapted to the diverse situations of different municipalities. These are examples of innovative actions based at a local level. So I'd like to conclude by saying what will allow us to innovate on a financial level. Well, first of all, to reinforce exchanges between cities and financial sources so that we can learn from each other and improve the capacity and to find new financial solutions. Secondly, to reinforce financial instruments for cities by cities, as well as for local authorities. And I'd like to greet once more, I'd like to recognize the organizers of the UCLG and their representatives here, and the FMDV of the UNCDF with the international funds they provide. And finally, to appeal that we should improve, so it enables us to improve and create legal environments which should enable us to attract financing and to develop innovative solutions at a local level. On that note, I conclude and I'd like to thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Because we're so far behind, we're not going to open up the floor for questions. So if you want to speak to any of the speakers afterwards, please approach them directly. So I'm going to end just with one small story which reflects some of the things that have been said. Quite recently, a mayor of a large metropolitan area asked me what leadership was. How would I define leadership at a local level? And I told him about a picture. I was fortunate enough 20 years ago to meet the mayor of San Juan. And she had given up and it was important there was a she had given up a very lucrative career to try and do something about the poverty in Puerto Rico, and she was mayor of San Juan. And the picture that I had, and it was a photograph, was her sitting on an upturned bucket in the mud in an informal settlement. And that's leadership. And her message was that if I can't work with you as mayor, work with all of the citizens, including all the informal settlement citizens, to make your lives better, then what's the point of me being a mayor? And that stuck with me for 20 years. And that, I think, is reflected in the leaders that we have up here, both from the community and from the cities. So may I please can you join me in thanking all of our speakers for taking part in this great leadership to make democracy work for our citizens. Thank you.
So we're trying to catch up on delays now, so I'm going to call Mr. Octavio de la Varga, who is the Secretary General of Metropolis, to join us on the stage to moderate the third and last panel on recommendations. Octavio, are you here?
So don't know to say good morning or good afternoon already. We're running, as you know, we're running almost an hour late, but I hope you will keep with us until the last minute. We're starting the last session, leading the local global coalition towards the implementation of the decade. And I would like to invite to do the opening statement to Mrs. Soledad Cisterna Reyes, la enviada especial del Secretario General de Naciones Unidas para Disability and Accessibility. Por favor, si quiere. And I would like ask the panelists to join us already here on the stage. Mrs. Soham El Wardini, la maire de Dakar. Mrs. Norani Roslan, mayor of Subang Jaya. Mr. Mohamed Budra, mayor of Al Uzeima. And Mr. Vera Kalushko, Mayor of Kashnodar, and Mr. Manuel Daraujo, Mayor of Quelimane. Please join us on the floor, on the stage, not on the floor. Okay. I've just been told that the Mayor of Budra and Dakar they are not joining us, so we have a shorter panel, Lucky you, the session will be maybe shorter. I don't know if we don't have debates. Let's get started. María Soledad, cuando quieras.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Good morning to all of you, one and all. Right now, I'm going to give you the results of the town hall work about accessibility. This work was carried out by many people, and due to lack of time, I shall go direct to the point. First of all, we've based our ideas on the fact that leadership is to be found in local and regional governments in order to implement so-called inclusive and accessible cities. It's also important not to forget that those without any kind of distinction and without looking at the economic means of our citizens, who should give each and every one of them legitimacy and empowerment in order to be able to take those opportunities given by the city in political, economic, social and cultural spheres. And this led us to the concept which is accessibility. Now, accessibility is all conditions which should be fulfilled by physical spaces, information transport, communication, technology, processes and procedures in such a way that they can be used by all people in the most safest and most comfortable way possible. Now, where do we get this concept from? Well, it's a 21st century legal concept, and it's in the Convention of the Rights of People with Disabilities, as well as in the New Urban Agenda. It refers to cities, but also to urban and rural, to those which belong to the public sector, but also which belong to the private sector. And so, therefore, a wide range of aspects are involved. Now, accessibility is a legal obligation, which is enshrined in the Regional Convention of People in the Inter-American Charter. But it's also a legal obligation. It's also an opportunity so that cities can really be inclusive. Although we have more than 1 million people with disabilities in the world, and we have more than 900 people, elderly people in the world, it's not less true that accessibility should be universal. This affects the different sectors of the population. I'd like to say, too, if you have an accident tomorrow, for example, and thereafter you have a problem, you're going to you'll be in a situation of accessibility you'll have in the city. For example, a person who, at a given moment in time, has a hearing problem, which is temporary, is also going to use other aspects of accessibility, and thus I can use many things. Also, accessibility also is an element in sustainable development. I like to say very clearly that this is number SDG 11, referring to human settlements, inclusive, which are resilient and sustainable. They have a direct relationship with accessibility, and thus this is the way it's put in the objectives. This GRU is emphatic by pointing out that without accessibility there cannot be sustainable development. So what are the recommendations? Well, first of all, to harmonize legislation and public policies, and bring them in line with the national the Charter of the United Nations Disability Charter, to Agenda 2030, the new urban agenda, and the platform of friendly cities for elderly people. And of course, too, that public policy should be based on 5 main basic principles. 1, non-discrimination, participation, accessibility as such, urban accessible policies, the development of capabilities for development, and of course data gathering broken down by sex, age, gender, age, which should be inclusive and the basic for the future legislation for public policies too. In order to conclude, I'd like to say that it is necessary that accessibility should be taken as a pillar of sustainable development and a bridge for the exercise of other rights. For this, we see that this transversality, this cross-cutting nature, which is found in accessibility, should be taken on board and regarded intensely in UCLG, in its different stakeholders, as well in the other town hall, which will have been developed over the duration of this Congress. Only this way, only thus, with accessibility understood in the terms I've just described, will we not leave anyone behind, and nor will we leave any place behind. I'd like to conclude by saying that smart cities will be real, the smart cities, insofar as they look at accessibility and participation as people with disabilities and have them at the core of their concerns. Thank you very much.
Gracias,
Thank you very much, Maria Soledad. You have shown here 2 elements. 1, cross-cutting nature of the SDGs. 1 is, for example, also how SDGs have impact all over the place. You talked about accessibility, but also talking about inclusion. You talked about sustainability, and you talk about rights, not leaving anyone behind. Another important element, using a specific example, specific policies, linked to disabilities and accessibility, is how necessary this dialogue is between civil society and citizens and local governments.
As you know, the World Assembly of Local and Regional Governments is our political mechanism that builds from diversity, and it's amplifies the voices of at the international level, and it amplifies the voices of local regional governments, and also is the place where all the networks of local governments gather together, building together, bringing our expertise, our regional approaches, all together with a wide range of diverse local actors. And in this sense, there's been an evolution within the Global Task Force. The work of the Global Task Force and the work of the World Assembly of Local and Regional Governments is about how we can be able to connect with the civil society organizations. I mean, I'm sure all mayors will agree here that we need civil societies if we want to really transform our cities and if we really want to implement the SDGs. So I would like to give the floor to Mrs. Noraini Roslan, Mayor of Sukban Haya, to give us her views on that, how we can relate to civil society in order to better implement the global agendas.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Thank you for still being here. I thought the hall would be half empty. This is a true expression of partnership, that you're still here empowering mayors, empowering local governments and regional governments towards achievement of sustainable development goals. It can be daunting. The tasks are many and with pressures all around. Mayors and city governors can be lost at prioritizing which areas that we need to emphasize on because of the many demands of the citizen. And how do we listen to all the people within the city without leaving anybody behind, to take into the whole marginalized group through effective communications, through going down on the ground, listening, seeing for ourselves, feelings, what they need most compared to what we think that is good for them. We have attempted at partnership, at collaborations before. So what does this forum bring the difference? The urgency of implementing, the urgency of working towards the achievement of SDGs in a faster pace cannot be emphasized enough. Earlier, Hans have reiterated about the recommendation that we reached yesterday on the code of conduct of all the partners if we need to work together. There is an issue of trust, issue of understanding what each other's role, issues of accountability, issues of measurement. With this conduct, we hope that the manner that we work together will be clearer, will be easier to facilitate programs and projects that we are going to do together in the future. There are also many areas of cooperation that is needed. Among them are information dissemination. I don't see all cities as being aware of what SDGs are all about, and the urgency of achieving this global agenda, to see that each of our local actions have a global impact and how we can accelerate the efforts toward achieving all these agendas. Cities need to be aided in measuring where their status are, and to formulate plans and to set the KPIs and to see these gaps and how do we fill these gaps within the stipulated times. All of this need cooperation from other world organizations, civil societies, so that cities are empowered. There are these areas for sharing of knowledge. I mean, platforms like this are really helpful to learn from each other, but there may be needs for more detailed technical workshops and tools that we can give to any cities that needs help in various departments, in various areas. These tools and mechanisms, I believe they are out there. So we need to tell the cities that these tools are available, that partners are available in helping cities to implement better, to do it faster. There are also partnerships that can be done in the areas of assessment. And I believe before this, national assessment are done, but not actually looking into what the local challenges and gap in achieving these goals. So better assessment needs to be done. I can give 3 examples where the city of Subang Jaya have embarked upon partnership. One is in the bottom 40 citizen empowerment, where the local, low-cost areas being thought on how to better manage their areas, and we listen to what their priorities are as far as infrastructure and social and economic programs that they need. We give them small budgets, but the most help comes from civil societies. And we have 2 local universities that are helping us in formulating the best approach to help these groups. Secondly, we have embarked upon the Smart Cities Living Lab, where we invite all solution providers, real platforms, so that they can test their innovations, and giving them opportunities to implement it on a pilot scale before they can upscale their innovations. And thirdly, in the efforts of responsible consumption, as an income increase, people use more energy, use more from food to real properties. And this involves various multi-stakeholders, and we need partners in improving this responsible consumption and improvement towards circular economy. That's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will keep one not simple, a very important word that you have said throughout your speech several times, is when working with civil society, when working with citizens, the critical word is trust. You say that without trust you cannot work, and it's true for long periods of time, and still now there's sometimes misunderstanding between civil society organizations. There's a mistrust towards the local governments, towards the mayors. They think, well, they don't have the capacity. Sometimes the local governments are corrupted, so they don't really are implementing the policies that we need. And well, you are providing us
The misalignment of missions.
a misalignment of missions. But as you said, the global agendas, even if we don't want, they force us to work together. I mean, of course, knowing that a local government is a government which is elected by the citizens, but as well, we cannot, as you said, we cannot implement policies without taking into account citizens and the civil society organizations. And you also mentioned in speech, and that's why I'm moving to Mrs. Vera Galushko, mayor from Krasnodar. You mentioned as well that we need to partner or to work with national governments. This is the other actor. And as well, there is an issue, suppose, well, of trust, and also how we can align national policies with local policies when implementing the SDGs. And when we take into account that sometimes, I remember the way up to Quito, for the new urban agenda, some nation states, they didn't consult their local governments. So how can we work together, local governments and national governments? So please.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I represent the city of Krasnodar.
Населением свыше 1 миллиона человек, город инвестиционно привлекательный, безопасный для проживания, динамично развивающийся, является столицей Краснодарского края Российской Федерации. Краснодарский край, вы можете вспомнить, ассоциируется с городом Сочи, где проходила зимняя Олимпиада в 2000
With the city of Sochi, where the Olympics ran. Yeah, Krasnodar Krai is a 1 million city in Russia, in the South Federal District. The Olympics was there in 2014. My report is dedicated to the cooperation in the Eurasian section of UCLG with respective national governments. It's important for cities to gain trust of national governments. They needed to explain the key role of local authorities in the implementation of SDGs. This needs to be explained to the national governments. We started our work from Russia. We reached an agreement with the Russian government that the cities should participate in preparing the voluntary report on achieving the SDGs. This report will be presented in 2020 at the General Assembly of the United Nations. UCLG Eurasia takes part in topical work groups on SDGs. SDG number 9, Industrialization, Innovation and Infrastructure. SDG 11, Sustainable Cities and Settlements. SDG 13, Tackling Climate Change. SDG 17, Partnership for the Sustainable Development. And also the SDG on Gender Balance. I would like to tell you that the General Secretary of UCLG Eurasia has already brought on board the proposal to analyze the representation of females in the cities of Russia. And this analysis will be reviewed in the report. Ladies and gentlemen, it should be noted that the Russian government has authorized the Analytical Center to do the preparation of the review at the national level. Every topical work group on respective SDGs will try to embrace as many opinions as possible, opinions of the interested parties, including our organization and our cities. The review of this report is done by authorities of all levels, associations and experts and academia. I can tell you that a number of meetings was held in Moscow, meetings of the topical work groups. Meetings were held on the preparation of voluntary national report on the implementation of SDGs. In early 2020, the Analytical Center will start discussions and consultations on the preliminary draft report. It's of utmost importance that Eurasia cities can take part and contribute to this report. Thank you for your attention.
Mrs. Vera, I mean, that was an example of how local governments can work and align with national governments, of course respecting each one's powers and competencies. May now I give the floor to Mr. Manuel de Araujo, Mayor of Quelimane. I know you see that within the Global Task Force. Sorry, just let me introduce that has joined us the Mayor of Shawen, Mohamed Soufani, long-lasting friend, but as well member of UCLG. Mayor Manuel de Araujo, I think you see in the World Assembly of Local and Regional Governments, which is promoted by the Global Task Force, we have a lot of organizations, a lot of different networks. Ones are part of the UCLG family, others are the ones that we call sister networks. How do you see we can work better together, how we can consolidate all these movements that we are developing together, and also, I mean, in order to achieve the global agendas?
Thank you very much for these opportunities. I think it's very important that we define what this organization has, so that we have a common understanding of what are we talking about. And in our view, these organizations are collective representative entities, and they do represent the mayors or governors or other elected, most of the times, entities. And they work on behalf of their members, and which are their constituencies. So they are there to amplify, to respond, but also to implement the agenda of their constituencies, which are their members. So they are a vehicle aimed at voicing the concern, the purposes, the challenges, but also the constitution of those members. And as such, they play a pivotal role in the sense that local entities, they are embodied with three main characteristics. The first, mayors and other local elected officials. The first is the issue of legitimacy. Because they are elected, they bring within themselves the issue of legitimacy to carry on that agenda. The second is the issue of proximity, because local governments are the first to face any challenge. For example, I could give the example of the recent cyclones that we had in Mozambique, which affected 9% of the city of Beira. The city was cut off, was literally on a siege by the cyclone Idai. And so nobody could leave the city and nobody could get in, either by air, by road, by railway, or by sea. So local entities were there. They were the first and the only ones who had the capacity to respond to the challenges that they were facing. And because of those characteristics, and the third is urgence, because they are there, they can answer directly. And so because of that three characteristics, as I mentioned before, they play a pivotal role. And in this case, these organizations can be national, regional, and for the case that I'm going to share here, it's a thematic one, which is ICLEI, which brings more than 1,700 national entities elected, most of them, and they all work or they are concerned with issues related with sustainable development, climate change, and the environment. And ICLEI plays a very crucial role by, first of all, capacitating its member, organizing the members to better respond to these challenges, And for example, towards every COP, as a focal point for LGMs, ICLEI prepares the roadmap towards those international meetings, as I mentioned, as COP and others, enabling their constituencies not only to attend, but also to participate in those gatherings. ICLEI also, for example, organizes pavilions to its members. For example, at gatherings like this, they will come up with a common place, a pavilion, where members could exhibit their work, could share experience, have exchange of information, debates, and so on. It also organizes media talks to its members, but not only, but mainly to its members and other organizations. One of the examples that I could share here is the work that ICLEI is doing on the Convention of Biodiversity, which is quite known to all of us. So this helps to strengthen the governance mechanisms of most of the institutions. And one of the suggestions that we are bringing here is, for example, that the Global Task Force should be equipped with a kind of a secretariat with the technical tools so that we together can achieve the objectives that are set up for this institution. And we, of course, ask other institutions to play or to decide on which areas they want to work. It can be, for example, on migration, on culture, or any other institution.
Thank you. Obrigado.
De nada.
And, well, if you've seen, you also highlighted one word from, well, you said many things, of course, but I think one interesting word, we're talking about the Global Task Force, about all the sisters organizations of the networks of local governments, regional, thematic, global, is legitimacy. And that's crucial, you know, the need for legitimacy of the work that will go together, to know who is behind us in order that our messages are put forward. Monsieur le maire de Chaouen, merci.
Mayor of Chefchaouen, this is the final panel. We're talking about the future of how to work together. I thought that at the local governments, we are in a complicated situation, if I could describe it as such, because we are dealing with different levels of government. We need to work with civil society. We've also mentioned the word trust. We need to trust people. We need to build bridges between local officials and civil society. We also talk about alignment with national governments, its policies. Sometimes not that easy. We also talked about legitimacy of the networks which need to work together, i.e. to create strategies and to have tools so that the network can work better in a more legitimate way together in order to pass on the message, to carry out their advocacy role vis-à-vis national governments. What's your ideas around this thing? Thank you very much, dear friends, and indeed. Now, of course, the Global Task Force has done a tremendous job. We started with the municipal movement, with this group work or collective work within the Global Task Force. We started there, and now we've found the main world networks of cities and regions. We're all present here, and we are working in a creative and intelligent way. We've overcome many barriers. Before, with the UN system, for example, we were put together. Cities were not recognized. Regions weren't recognized either. Now they are. I was the 11th of July last year. There were many of us in New York, and we were received by Mr. Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the UN, as a delegation of the Global Task Force. This was a symbolic gesture. Recognition by the Secretary General of the United Nations. And this didn't come just by chance. This is thanks to the work which has been done. We work together. We have political leadership. And we have the technical leadership too, about a wide range of subjects. And of course, this deals with the management and governance of cities, regions, territories, and with issues both of today and tomorrow. Sustainable development, climate, immigration, employment, etc., so on and so forth. Now, vis-à-vis this, at the global level, at the global task force, we cannot find a better space which brings together all these networks than the one we have here. So a great deal of good work has been done already. I remember when we were preparing this, the SDGs, the role of the Global Task Force was extremely important. We've seen this particularly in SDG number 11, which is specific for territories and cities. Then, the New Urban Agenda in Quito. We've carried out a great deal of lobbying so that cities and territories appear clearly in the final declaration and the final documents, together with the New Urban Agenda. Now, it's the era of localization. The localization of urban agenda. I believe a global task force is one of the great missions we have is localization of different agendas, particularly SDG on climate and the New Urban Agenda. To this end, vis-à-vis the future, it's very important to provide ourselves with more resources, more to the Global Task Force in order to be able to accomplish these missions in the best conditions possible. With one very important aspect, i.e. human resources, we need to reinforce too. And then the financial side too. Localization of finance is important, particularly climate finance. This is so important. We need to think about financial engineering or financial architecture, which can help and support cities and territories to implement localization of these different agendas, particularly the SDG and finances, and the climate, rather, says the speaker, correcting himself. This is the reason why I believe that we are we're together, but we want to give force of greater strength, greater clout to ourselves to have access to finance, because to date we've still got a long way to go. We have not yet got to the aims we've set ourselves. Institutions, we need to be stronger within the United Systems. The COP come along, but we need an involvement, recognition, very specific, of cities and territory in the decision-making process in these COP, in the COP for the SDGs, the same thing, because it's okay to localize it, but how and with what means do we localize? That, I believe, is one of the major missions and one of the big challenges we're faced with for the Global Task Force. The way I see it, at least, based on the very positive things which have been done to date by the Global Task Force itself. Thank you very much for listening.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
View. It's true that at the beginning the Global Task Force and behind the World Assembly of Regional and Local Leaders, which provides the legitimacy to the Global Task Force, it was sorry, I tend to simplify sometimes. It was about a seat at the global table, but I think we're moving forward. It's not only about being there, it's about also being able to influence and to shape, and then also to be able to deliver locally. And you said three things. I think that there are many topics, but if you think, and what I'm hearing around all these days, that finance is one of the critical issues that we should be taking forward and be more active on that and influencing more. And the other one is climate. And then as well, what's coming from you and your previous colleagues and previous mayor is the issue, in this sense, we need to strengthen the Global Task Force, and we need to really think as well the way we want to work together. But it is clear that the Global Task Force and the World Assembly of Regional and Local Leaders is the place to be, and it's the instrument that collectively can take us forward. So I'm told that we need to wrap up. Well, I've already wrapped up, sorry. We don't have more time, but I really thank you because the session started half an hour later, but we have finished on time. And this is thank you to all these panelists that they were very straightforward, very clear, but very concise. So thank you very much.
Good morning. While they're taking the pictures, and thank you again to the panelists, I'd just like to remind you that the